Development Manager. And we'll actually let Neil introduce himself a little bit as well. Can you hear me, Neil?
Yep.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Neil Colley. I'm a Global Business Development Manager for Amazon Quicksight. So I've been working with the tool for close to 2 years, or a little bit over a year and a half. Before that, I was at Microsoft for about 4 years, covering Power BI and SQL on a global team, and grew up at IBM before Microsoft for about 11 years, covering Cognos and Watson Analytics.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll talk a little bit about Mike Richter here as well. He's going to be doing the presentation. So we're going to be walking through a new company, NewCo, and an exercise that will help NewCo make better business decisions. Mike Richter has over 30 years of experience in leading all aspects of assessing, planning, designing, implementing, and managing enterprise-wide solutions. He has been with Charter for 12 years as a senior consultant. Way to go, Mike. In addition to the many clients he has worked with at Charter, he has also held positions at Pragmatech Consulting, Harman Glass, and Carlson Companies. He attended the University of Minnesota Duluth and has a BAc in Finance and Mathematics. He has many certifications and license with AWS and Tableau. Please help us welcome Mike this morning.
Maybe want to save that for the end, right? Just or not. We got about 10 minutes here too. I've got about a 45-minute or so demonstration here. And I'm going to try and keep it moving pretty quickly. But if you do have some questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand. But I do want to try and move through it because there's a lot to cover in a short period of time. What we're going to do here is we're going to go through a real live case study. When I say live, I mean using legitimate data and how I would approach this. If this was a company I was doing this work for, how I would approach doing this Quicksight exercise here. So I'm playing the role of a visualization analyst. I may be wearing a couple of hats here. I might be a data analyst as well. So you're going to see us going through a number of activities here that would kind of fit into those roles. So NewCo changed its name to XYZ Company, just so you know. Just recently. So I'm going to be showing you data. We're going to be working with data that's essentially kind of retail sales oriented looking data. So pretty vanilla data. A lot of orders, about 10,000 records, so we didn't keep the data set too high. And we're assuming this is a nationwide company. There's a team of sales reps who sell to customers. They're given some authority to make some discounting decisions, and you'll see that there's actually a visualization we want to look at to see if there are issues related to that. I would have met with the business people. In this case, it's the VP of Sales, and these are the three main things this person wants to really hone in on, is to understand which regions in the country and what product categories are generating the most business, revenue and profit-wise. How has product discounting activity impacted margins or not impacted margins? And then if we get a chance, we'll take a look at some geo mapping of data, because this person wanted to understand what part of the country is generating most of the business as well, and who are our top selling customers. So those are pretty legitimate questions I think you would find in almost any scenario. And so me as the analyst, I've learned all that, I've documented that, and now I'm maybe meeting with some IT folks to understand the data a little bit. And what my task really is to create a data set. And we're going to build a data set here, make that data set available for us to build from, and then maybe even share it to others if they want to use it. We'll create a set of dashboards, and then we'll show how to share those at the end. So pretty straightforward activities, and frankly, I would say these are not unique to AWS. This is pretty standard for any kind of tool that you would use. We're going to be looking at a database that has 3 tables. Our primary transaction table has about 10,000 records in it. We've got a table two tables that we're going to use for lookups. One has got customer information, the other has product information. There's a key sitting in this table for each of these tables, so we're going to be able to pull in some product name, customer segment, and sales rep information. Pretty straightforward. And then we're going to create some metrics, and we're going to leverage those metrics. Now, I could have just created this data set in Excel and made a CSV, and we could have looked at it that way too, because you can ingest flat files as well, and I'm sure Michael told you that, but I think it's a little more legit to look at it using a database. I mean, that's how most people that I'm working with are using it. So we're going to try and do that, and we're going to try and, I've got 3 sets of dashboards we're going to create. The first one really addresses that. What does our sales and profitability look like by region? What's the breakdown by the product subcategories? Second set of questions is, show me something about product discounting. Are there trends? And you'll see that there are trends. And how is the discounting activity impacting profits? And then to try and get some nuggets here on sales reps and product subcategories to see if there are some outliers that are driving some of the things that we're seeing. And lastly, to just show a basic map of where the big business is happening around the country, who some of our top customers are, and some metrics. So I would say this is pretty straightforward and pretty basic, but I'm not sure. I want to make sure we at least get through the first 2, so we'll just see where we're at after I get through those. All right, now let's try this again. So you're going to be presented with this kind of a layout where you can either start a new analysis, you can look at dashboards you've already created. Of course, Quicksight does have some tutorials you can look at that are pre-built with the product that come bundled. We're going to be focusing on these 2 areas. We're going to build out a data set, and then we're going to publish the data set and our dashboards up here. So really the first step is we want to create a data set. We want to manage data. And in this case, we're going to create a new data set. And if I wanted to, if I had that CSV, I could upload it right here. But I actually have a Postgres database that I'm going to leverage. And we'll just put in some credentials here. So I'm connecting to a database that has a schema. And here are the 3 tables I showed you earlier. Our left table, our transaction or fact table, is going to contain orders. And we're going to start with that. And at this point right here, what we're doing is, I just want to make this note here. It's telling me that it's going to attempt to import this data into Spice, which is its fast engine. I could do a direct query against the database if I wanted to. I'm not going to. I want to use this fast engine here. I've got this free data to use, so I'm going to. It always tells me how much data is available. And I could visualize right away, or I could edit this data set. I'm going to edit it because it's not ready for me to use, but you can see real quickly what kind of data it's bringing in. On the left is every column that's in that data set, and there's information about each column. It basically tells you what kind of data it is, and it gives you an opportunity to make some changes to it. So when I look at this, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for anything that, for example, a type. If something is coming across as a wrong data type, I want to make the changes, and I want to make them here. I can also look down here and see the actual columns themselves and some of the data points that are in here. And also gives me opportunity to make some changes. Notice it's bringing in some of my numeric data, like for in this example right here, total sales. It's bringing in the sales for every transaction. None of that's formatted here. So none of the formatting when you prep the data is done in this interface. That's all done in the visual section. So I can tell the tool later on that this is dollars, not a percent. I can tell it that discount is, this decimal is really a percent from a formatting standpoint. We'll do all that later. Right now we're just looking at this data to see that it looks good, and so far we're not going to make any changes, but we do want to bring in those other data sets. We just have orders right now. If you look here real quick, you'll see that there is a customer ID right here, and there's a product ID, but we have no customer name, we have no product name. So let's bring in those, and we can add data. And we're going to go and bring in customers. And it attempts to start creating a join. However, it doesn't really know what it wants to use as a join. And we're going to tell it that we want to use customer ID. And we're going to use an inner join by default. I could change that to left, right, or outer join here, or full join. And I'm applying that right now. Let's see. Oh, might be helpful if I put that there. And now you can see I now have customer name, customer segment, and I also have a sales rep for each record. Didn't have that before. If we go and add in our products, same thing. We can create a join here on product ID. This will allow us to bring in the relevant columns we wanted from the product table. If we scroll over here, we can see that we're getting a product category, we're getting an actual product name, and a product subcategory as well. So now we've got our data set compiled, and we could go ahead and start doing some analysis right away. But there's a couple things that we can also do here. So in almost every case when you're building out these data sets, there are other measures that you might want to leverage going forward. So for example, if we look at this and we scroll down, we see the only real facts that were brought in were unit cost. We have a year, which is numeric. We have discount, total sales, and order quantity. What we don't have is we don't have profit. We don't have total cost. But we can calculate all of that here real easily and create calculated fields. And in this case, I'm going to take, I want to create a total cost. And in this case, I'm just going to take our order quantity times our unit cost. And now we have a total cost over here that we can leverage. And maybe one other thing we should add is profit. So we've got sales, we've got costs, we've got discounts, but we don't have profit at this point. So let's create one more. And you might ask, why are we doing this here? Why don't we just do it in the visualization side? Which we could, but the difference is when we create it here and then we pull all of that data into Spice, we're now throwing those pre-calculations into memory, so it's going to speed it up a little bit quicker than doing it on the visualization side. So let's create something here called profit. And in this case, we're going to take total sales minus total cost. And we have a discount here as well that we want to pull into as well. So very much like Excel. And we now have profit. And so at this point, we have a data set that we can leverage and start using. I could switch this from Spice to Query, but we'll keep it at Spice at this point here. We can give it a name. And I'm just going to call this sales demo. And we're going to save and visualize this. So we're going to actually jump right into the visualization. I could have saved it. Let me go back here. If I had saved it and chose not to visualize right away, you can see that I have this data set, a new data set created. I did skip a step here. Let's say I'm the owner of this data set here, and I'm the only one who can modify it, but I want others to use it and create visualizations. I can share this with people. Right now, it's not shared to anybody. I'm the sole owner of it. I can share it to a group of people or an individual person if I wanted to. I can also assign different permissions to the people. So an individual could just be kind of a consumer of the data but can't make any changes. Another could have a role where they're actually able to own and have the same permissions that I just had, which is they can modify it. Any questions on that?
Is there anyone who has the ability to set limits on, for example, the refresh schedule that the authors can use?
I could create a schedule right here as the owner of this data set. I'm the author of this, and so I could create a schedule right here to refresh it. I would have to give a permission to somebody to allow somebody else to change the schedule.
So authors have the ability to set whatever schedule they want. Okay.
But I could give somebody else that authority, that permission as well. So let's.
So quick question: if we have a report where only one author is dealing with all the configuring part of that, accidentally he's not available. No one have the authorization about that report. Is there any way we can bring it back into
Yeah, so I just created a data set and made myself the owner of that, the author of that. I would probably want to pass some of that permission off to somebody else. You're right. You wouldn't normally be the sole owner of that. You're essentially publishing that data set for others to consume. You just don't want to open it up to anybody in the business to make changes to. They can consume it. You might give 2 or 3 people the ability to modify and do what I just did. Add another table. Add budget data, for example. Give that authority to somebody else, but not everybody. So let's start a new analysis here, and we'll leverage that data set and create an analysis. And one of the things it shows you right off the bat, it tells you how many rows were loaded. It tells you if all of them were successfully loaded. I could have seen that back on the previous screen when I created the data set as well. And I probably would want to look at that to make sure that everything loaded right. If it didn't, it means there's probably a join issue going on. And I would verify that before I even came this far, actually. But we'll just close that.
All of the other types of validation, because in this case, you're assuming all the product keys exist in the product table, all the customer keys exist.
I made it work. Yeah.
But would you have? Is this the place to add all of those kind of error checking inside Quicksight, or is there something else?
You could do it here, but if this is a table, if you're in the Amazon cloud, you probably most like I've got Postgres here. You might have Aurora or something else out there. I'd probably just go right into that and query directly against that to test, just because you don't really have a query panel here where you can go and type in your own custom queries. But I certainly, to answer your question, I would ask the owner of that table to tell me how many records I should be looking for. If they said you should have 9,994 and I've only got 5,000, then there's an issue, and I got to go sit down and work that out with a DBA or whoever owns that data set. But yes, you could easily use this to figure out what's wrong, what's missing. Right off the bat, what you're going to see is all the field. Let me close this here. These are all the columns that were in that data set. And anything, boy, this is, apologize for the scrolling here. It should show all of them. They're here. It's just not showing up on the display. These are all the columns that are in the data set, and even the ones that I created are in here. There we go. Here's that profit that I created earlier. And we have an opportunity to format things here. Remember I told you earlier, this is where you would do the formatting. Now, 2 ways to do that. There's some people that'll go through every single column here. They'll pre-format everything and say it's good to go, now I'm going to start using it. Today what we're going to do is kind of do it on the fly. We're only going to format the stuff that we need to. And for example, we'll change this profit to currency right here. I'm not going to go through all of them in here that need to be changed. Over on the left are different functions that we can apply that we're going to take advantage of here. We've got the ability to filter. We've got insights we can use. We could create a story. We're going to create a parameter here, and I'll show you how that can be leveraged. When you start to visualize, if you select Add here and select Add Visual, Quicksight is going to show you all the different default visuals that you can use here. So if you remember that first one we had across the top, we had a bunch of KPIs. The next one down had a bunch of pies. And I'll explain what we're trying to accomplish in those. We look at this real quick. What we're going after on this first set right here is this. Which regions and product categories generate the most sales and profits? And this is what our first visual is going to look like. So there's really 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 7 different widgets, so to speak, that we're going to create here. So on the first one, just do this. We're going to select KPI, which is this first one in right here. And what we're going to be comparing here is total sales and we're going to compare that to total cost in this case. Actually, let's put profit in here. See if that looks right.
I like that profit.
Yeah, let's do this. You do? Well, I'll just leave it that way then. There we go. So I put in profit, that formula that we did earlier, plus total sales, and what it's doing is it's showing you those up here. It's also calculating the percent. I could create a profit percent if I want, but in this case here, it's doing that for me. That's how the KPI widget, so to speak, works. And if you remember, there's 4 of them, and there's 1 for each region. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a filter to this first one. And we're going to select a ship to region. And let's just pick from a filter list here. Now, when you filter, you have the opportunity to either filter from lists of data. You could selectively create a custom filter list, which I'll show you shortly. We can look at top and bottom types of filters. Show me the top 10 of these or the bottom 10. But in this case, we're going to just pick a list. And we'll just pick central for the first one and apply this. So now what we've got here is this is the sales and profits for the central region. And in fact, let's just central region. Let's just type that in. Now we want one for each of the other regions. I'm going to shrink this down just a bit. We don't have to go through all the steps I went through to create this. We can just duplicate this and change the filter. So I'm going to duplicate this visual and just go in and edit the filter. And we'll make this one east. Apply that.
Could I just do once and let it replicate by itself? Instead of doing that one at a time?
You sure could. This is the way my brain works. I don't know if that's good or bad. South, and we'll apply that. And you know, let's just leave those in there for right now. I don't see a bar down here. We'll do one more. And because of my screen resolution here, I'm running out of real estate. I'd have to make these all really tiny. I think you kind of get the idea, though. We'll make them fit. So there isn't a nice little automatic button that you can press that says automatically line all of these up. I haven't found it yet. So that's good. So we've got these here now. Down below, we're going to put in some pies to show the next level down. So what we've got is the highest level here by region. We're looking at sales and profit margin, but this isn't telling us a thing about the categories of products. So let's add another visual, and we'll select a pie. And notice when I select something, this field wells opens up here. It's already paving the way for me to drag and drop things up here. I could drag and drop them straight onto here or up here, but it opens up this field wells for me to look at. And so in this case here, I want to look at total sales by, in this case, we're going to put in product subcategory. Find it. There it is. And now this is for every single product subcategory. If you remember, there were 3 of them on the bottom. That's because I created one for each segment. So there's a filter we're going to apply. Above, we applied filters based on region. On the bottom, we're going to try and give a little information about how the products divvy up based on different types of dimensions within the data set. So in this case here, we're going to add in segment, which in this case is, we're going to pick from the filter list. And there should be only 3 segments: consumer, corporate, and home office. And so let's pick consumer and apply that. And let's duplicate that, and we'll add one other, corporate, and apply that. Make that a little bit smaller. And then we'll add one more, which duplicate that. And edit this filter. So now we've got home office. So we've got the start of that first, actually that first visual is done, except there's one feature that I didn't put in here yet that I want to show you. This is and if you have questions, just jump in. Good. So we've got the start of a dashboard here. I think this is probably enough for us to put on one dashboard. There's a tendency sometimes for people to just go crazy with these and keep adding more and more, and this scroll bar gets longer and longer. When you deploy this to an end user, they'll scroll a little bit, but they're not going to scroll down and down and down. Let's only show them what we need to show them to answer specific questions on each dashboard. So in this case here, I'm just going to call this analysis 1. But remember, this was, oops. I'd like to put in a description that says something like, which regions and product subcategories are driving the most sales and profit. And actually show the question we're trying to answer. Because frankly, that's what they want to know, is what's the answer to their question. And let's put the question on there. Now, remember, if we look at that data set, I probably didn't show you, but there are 4 years worth of data in this data set. If I'm an executive looking at this, what year is this? Well, it's every year. I want to look at a particular year. There's nothing on here to help me understand that. We can add a filter. There's 2 ways we can tackle this. We can add individual filters on ones. We can add a filter that applies to all of these at the same time, which is what we're going to do. But we can give them the ability to use that filter using what's called a control, a parameter in a control. So what we want to do is have this nice little drop down where they can just pick the year. And the way that you do that in Quicksight is by actually starting with creating a parameter, which in this case I'm just going to call year. And what it's going to be is it's going to be an integer value. If you remember, we did have a column called year in our data set. I probably didn't show it to you. We want to display multiple values when we present this control. It's all we need for right now in this particular parameter. And then we want to leverage that parameter to create a control. And here's where we put in whatever the display name is that the end user is going to see. So I would say something like select a year. And it's a multi-select. And I want it to link, I want that parameter to link to values in my data set, which happens to be this demo data set. You can use parameters across multiple data sets. We're just using one database here, but I could do it across multiples as long as it met the criteria of, had a similar column. And the column I'm going to use is year. And if I say add, you see what just happened here is it put this control up here. If I look at that control, you'll notice that first time it has to go through and load all the values. Now you can see all the years that are in the data set. But it doesn't do anything right now. All I've done up to this point is create a control that allows them to select something. I need to tell them what to do with this control. What I want to do is tell Quicksight to use whatever value they pick to drive a filter. So that there's 3 steps to what we're doing here. I did the first 2 steps to get this far. The third step is to create a filter. We'll add a new one, and we're going to use year. And I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to say I want it to apply to all visuals. So by default, Quicksight is going to try and do it to only this visual, which happens to be the last one that I clicked over here. I don't want it to do that. I want it to apply to everything. And when we say all visuals, it's all visuals on this tab. Important distinction. If I had 5 more tabs of dashboards here, this does not apply across every single tab. You have to do this on each tab, unfortunately. But all you have to do is expose the control and then use the filter, and then it's done.
I saw that you had the option to select specific, instead of the whole one, you could select specific visuals. I assume you could select any subset.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's say I only wanted, when they selected these years, I only wanted it to apply to this one, and something on the bottom. I could. And in fact, this is the point where you sit down with the business people and say, okay, first of all, how do you like this as a general way to present the data? Now what do you want to see? How do you want to filter it? And in this case here, yeah?
You did mention that the scope of the year parameter is only to that tab. So is there another way to make it cross-filter across tabs?
No, you have to, in
That's
each
the
tab.
highest level? Okay.
Right, you can make it apply within everything in here. I don't believe you can duplicate tabs. Let's see, no, you
not
can't.
to
Yeah,
duplicate that, but
no,
the
no,
parameter.
but a duplicate of a tab would copy the parameter.
Okay.
Maybe in the future they'll do that. Other visualization tools allow you to copy tabs and then copy all of that. In this case here, we're going to have it apply to all visuals. this is a custom filter, and we're going to use parameters to drive it, and we're going to select the parameter that we created, which is year, and we'll apply that. And now when I go here and I select a year, now this is 2005. Go back to all years. So when we deploy this as a dashboard, they're going to see this right here. They're not going to have to go and do it to every single one of these and select a filter. We've just given them that. The other thing I would do on this one is, I mean, frankly, this is sales data. I'd want to let them be able to pick a sales rep and look at this whole thing by sales rep. So let's create another quick parameter, and let's just call it sales rep. It's going to be, it's a string value. We want it to show multiple values, to let them pick multiple, because maybe you've got a sales manager who's responsible for 2 or 3 sales reps, and we'll want to check those 2 or 3 sales reps. Create. We'll add the control. This is where we call it what we want. Select a sales rep, and I usually would do something like that, and link it to a field or a data set, which is the only data set we've got, and then we'll link it to a field, which is sales rep. Click add. So now here's our control. Remember, the control is just that. It's not functional yet until we add it as a filter, but here I can see my sales reps. And so now last step is to add that filter. And we'll find sales rep, because that's the thing that we want to filter. We'll apply it to all visuals on this page, on this tab. It's a custom filter. We're going to use parameters. We'll select the parameter sales rep. If there were more parameters that haven't been used yet, you would see them in the drop down, and we'll apply that. And now when I look at this, let's say you want to deploy this dashboard so sales reps get to look at it, which is obviously what you would want to do. And I'm perhaps Alan Kelly. Well, Alan Kelly doesn't care about anybody else's business but his. He's looking for his commission, and he wants to figure out what it's going to be. It's interesting. Alan Kelly doesn't sell any corporate or home office business, just consumer-related business. So this is not an error. This just means that he doesn't have those data sets. And here again, you could add multiples to this, or select everybody. And frankly, if 2 or 3 of these rolled up to a sales manager, I would go back to my data person and I'd say, I want to create a column in the data set for manager. Or if somebody told me that these first 3 rolled up to sales manager, John Smith, then I could create that within here. I could create a formula, a calculation. Over here, I could just create a calculation that basically said if sales rep equals this name or equals this name or equals this name, then the manager's name is this. And use that to drive it. The only problem with that is if you have new sales reps added, they won't get added to a manager. Yes, Michael?
Just in my presentation, I mentioned row-level security. That's another feature that you can do the same thing. So what Mike is doing right now with the filter to select a salesperson, you could actually use row-level security, and based on the salesperson's identity when they logged in, just show them their information. Be effectively the same. So if you decided you only wanted the salesperson to only see their information, you could do that based on row-level security, and it effectively would do what you're seeing here that Mike's doing with filter.
Right, and in fact, that would be, let's see.
You don't need
yeah,
to
all right.
if you're not ready for it. I just thought I'd mention it because it behaves the same way when it comes to what the visuals look like.
So at this point, this one is essentially done. Now, there's a lot of formatting you could do. You notice here, when I hover over things, it shows the value, which is great. By default, it's going to add these things, but maybe you want to show the label value instead. Maybe that's important, as opposed to telling them to hover. So you could actually go into each of these and format the visual and say show, well, in this case it's showing, well, it is in this case. Yeah, it is. Never mind. So at this point, we can deploy this dashboard by sharing. Now, what we've done is we've created a worksheet. We can share this whole thing as a worksheet to another analyst like me, maybe I'm the one going on vacation now and I want to hand this off to somebody else. I can share this whole set of visuals to that person and give them the permissions right now to make changes, just like I made right here. Or it could be done, and I'm ready to share it with the world as a dashboard, but only in a read-only fashion, meaning they get to just use drop-downs and filters. So let's do that. Let's just publish this as a dashboard. And notice here there's a couple options. Do we want to let the users do any filtering, advanced filtering? So all the filters that I added are up at the top. There's nothing that I added to any one of these. So at this point, it wouldn't make any sense. There'd be nothing for them to see. But if I had individually added filters on each of these worksheets to let them pick some other filtered category, this is where I decide whether I want to let them see those or not. I'll just leave it up there for now. The other is, do I want to enable them CSV download? So when they see that, do I want to allow them the ability to download the data? And we'll just leave it on for now. That's an important decision to make because there are a lot of clients I have don't want them to touch any of that. You get to use the drop downs and that's it. Don't be doing your own analysis and creating your own islands of analysis. So let's go ahead and publish this. And this is where now I don't have any users set up in this database, but if I did, this is where that sales VP would be. And maybe a whole slew of sales reps might belong to a group called sales reps. And maybe I'm using Active Directory to load those people in, which I could here. Or it could be somebody who's outside of the organization. I could put an email address here of my choosing.
So maybe I missed it earlier, but so this integrates with AWS Directory Services or however you have that set up on the back end, or where does it get its accounts?
So there's a couple of different ways. You can set up accounts just within Quicksight, but it also can integrate with Active Directory, AWS Active Directory Services, and other federated single sign-on capabilities.
Oh, sure. Or whatever.
So you've got a few different ways you can pull that together.
Got it. Thanks.
So this is what the dashboard looks like when we're done, and it looks very similar to what we were just looking at as the analyst role. Only difference is you don't see all of the columns here. So obviously we didn't give this person the ability to make any of those changes. We did give the ability though to see those parameters that we created. And so, if I'm Alan Kelly and I want to see how 2016 came out, I can. And so here again was our learning from before. He didn't have those. But it doesn't look dramatically different from the worksheet other than it takes away a lot of the noise from that. So pretty simple. I mean, everything I've shown you to this point is pretty straightforward. I mean, I think the average person in a couple hours could learn how to do everything I've done up to this point without a ton of experience on this, frankly. Questions up to this point. So I think we kind of answered all the questions that we wanted to have answered. We've given that sales VP the ability to look at sales and profit by region. We've given him the ability to select some filters, to look at a couple of different dimensions here as well. You can see some of this could be tweaked a bit, you know, and played with.
Do you have, I'm assuming, the ability to do all the traditional color format, if you want to change it from a minus sign to parentheses, you know, all the sort of fiddly formatting that people get so upset about.
Yeah, I would say yes and no. I would say you can accommodate most of it. I mean, let's face it, this product is, what, 3 years old? 3 years old, I think. And as Michael said, they're adding new features all the time. There's some basic ability to do that right now, which I think is great, and it has been meeting a lot of the needs. But there's a lot of things with KPIs, for example, that, like if...
I was just going to say, hey, this is Neil.
Yep.
So we do have conditional formatting, like extreme conditional formatting that's on the roadmap. It's in beta right now, and we can, if you decided to do a proof of concept, proof of technology, we can whitelist your account for the conditional formatting that you're probably used to seeing from most BI tools.
Okay, thank you.
Things like that you see on some of the tools that have been around for a long time, like, you know, show me an up arrow or a down arrow. Show me a thumbs up or thumbs down, or let me pull into it images that can be used to drive conditional formatting. You know, if this value is negative, show this symbol or this JPEG, for example. That's probably on the roadmap at some point. It's not there yet, but
Show the you're fired graphic.
that's what I was thinking exactly.
But we can provide a link or email addresses if people have any questions on them.
I don't know. I mean, I could go through other examples, but what I wanted to make sure is that you got the kind of the basics of this, and I feel like this is probably hitting a lot of that. The entire use case probably would take, based on how I've been going right now, would probably take at least another half an hour, 45 minutes. So I don't know that it makes sense to try and go only part way through some of that. I certainly could look at another one, but
I was going to say, I know you have some pre-built ones. Are there any features that you'd like to highlight from rather than building them?
yeah, let me go to, because I do have these done in here. So, and here's the finished product. So I called the tabs analysis 1, 2, and 3. And the second one, in this case, this one here, what we were trying to do was take a look at the profit margin trend. So one of the things that I hadn't done yet was create a new measure called profit margin percent, which essentially is a calculation that took the profit that we created earlier and divided by total sales to come up with a percent of sales. That's all it is. And I threw that on to see if there was an aha moment. And yes, there is an aha moment, and it happened basically from about the 1st of January on. Notice what happened to our profit margins. Let me get that out of the way. We were kind of going pretty consistent, and all of a sudden, boom, they dropped. Profit margin did. And why did it drop? And so the VP of sales had a hunch, and his hunch was that he thinks that there's a lot of discounting going on by the sales reps and wanted to take a look at discounting to see if that had an impact. That's what this one is here. And we see nothing, nothing, nothing. Aha, discounts are way up here. That seems to be in alignment with the same trend that we're seeing on profit margins. And so that was answering that one question. What it doesn't answer is, who's causing that? Is that one sales rep? Is that all sales reps? And is it all products or just 1 or 2 products? So this is only half the analysis. That's what these were down here. So up here we were looking at essentially line graphs, line charts. Down here we're looking at scatter plots. Scatter plot just needs 2 data points and a dimension. And that's what these are, is, if you look at the field wells, the discount percentage versus the profit margin percent, and I colored it by sales rep, and I sized it based on the discount percentage. And so what this did is it jumped out right away and said, hey, Emily Stokes and Alan Kelly, famous Alan Kelly, are giving away huge discounts in comparison to everyone else, and their profit margins are way down in comparison to everybody else. So not only did we have a trend up above, we now know who's responsible for it, so we got to go ask some questions, right? But we also know which products. These products over here, binders and, come on, where are you? And supplies, heavily discounted, we're losing money on those. What do you want to bet that it's Emily and Alan that are selling those products? So, very simple way to get insights into data without having to do a lot of real deep analysis. Now, did I make the data so that this would happen? Absolutely. I made the data so that this would stick out. I created a data set that we're using here, but I did it on purpose so that you could see those. If I hadn't done that, you would have just seen some pretty normalized data all the way through without any insights, and it wouldn't have been much fun to look at. Another nice thing that I do like is with trends by default, you can add these forecasts here. So this forecast here is not part of the data set. What it's doing is it's automatically creating a forecast based on all of the previous data points that were in here, and you have an opportunity to say, okay, by default you're using 14 data points. I'd like to use the last 24 data points, or you know what, just the last 12 data points. So you can change the look and feel of this, and that's just out of the box. So and this can even be done by a dashboard user. So somebody who doesn't have the ability to design, let's say I publish this without this forecast. By default, they have the ability to go in there, click on this line, and a little menu will say, do you want to see the forecast? And they can do that. You can allow them to do that.
I have 2 questions. One,
Yep.
are you able to put, I've just lost the words, the meaning of the different axes? I don't see a...
Yeah, you could put the axis titles, labels on there. Yeah, you could do that if you wanted to.
I just wanted
Yep,
to make sure it's...
was just letting the default go this way because I was doing some rapid building here.
That's,
and so,
that's fine.
Yep,
And
there's
then the other question is, so this is a data set of about
10,000.
10,000, excuse me. What speed would you expect to see this populate if it were, say, 100,000 or 1 million?
Well, I have a client just a few months ago I was working with, and they had sales data, and it was invoice header and then invoice line. So invoice header being a higher level, and then invoice line, you could have 20 lines per invoice. And we had, wish Ben was in here. It was a 25 gig file. This file here is maybe 100K. And in that case, I would say probably dragging and dropping something on here, which is querying against that, pulling it into Spice, not a direct query. Probably within about 3 seconds you could see something on the screen.
We're dealing with millions and millions.
Yeah. If I hadn't, and I tested this ahead of time, and I said, well, let's just query directly against the tables, you could have gone and gotten a cup of coffee. And I'm being perfectly honest, and I could name 3 or 4 other top visualization tools where the exact same thing would happen. So the lesson is, put it into Spice. Take advantage of the vendor's fast engine here wherever you can, or optimize your data set and use aggregates because you don't always need to see that level of detail. In this case, that particular customer wanted to be able to drill all the way down.
Sure.
Another nice thing is drill downs. So drill downs within this tool are much more intuitive than other tools. So I'm going back to our first analysis tab here. I'm picking on this first one here. I'm going to look at the well here and notice how we've colored this by product subcategory. If I were to go here and find product name, because to me, product names roll up to product subcategories. I'm going to put that right below here. Notice it says add drill down layer. Let go of that. Now when I go here, notice there's a down arrow. Or if I clicked on chairs, I could drill down to product name right now. So now this is all of the product names for chairs. Now there happens to be a big bucket of other that is not other as a name of a product. It's because, this is probably a bad example, but it's because they're all so small and there's probably 1,800 products in total. But I could also drill down by customer. So, and you can notice now it's got an up arrow because it knows I just drilled down. Or I could drill down from here, not from the hover over that I did here. Also, another thing is if you like different colors, you can change them real quick in here. These are just the default colors, but you could go to custom colors as well. So that's a really nice feature. There are other tools I work with as well that what I just showed you is not an easy proposition. This last one here was mapping. So I would say the mapping functionality here is pretty basic. It works really quick as long as you've got the dimensions. The geo dimensions down here is a little widget you can see that basically says points on a map, which is your geo option. And really all you need to map is you need a geospatial code. So zip code, state, city. There is not longitude and latitude per se here. And Neil, I don't know if that's something that's on the roadmap to get specific to individual custom longitudes and latitudes. Otherwise, all I did here was
Neil, could you repeat that one more time?
Yes, the into the future roadmap.
okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
We couldn't hear.
A Q3 roadmap.
We have. We also have like new custom theming that's coming with the conditional formatting as well. So that's part of the beta, and we should go live or GA with it by the end of September.
And so
September, he said.
where that comes in really handy, and I've done a lot of work with the State of Minnesota Department of Education, and they have built custom school districts. So they want to see all their data by school districts. Well, that data doesn't live anywhere but at the state of Minnesota. And they create their own polygon files, which essentially is custom longitude, latitudes for boundaries, specific boundaries. And there are some tools that will use that custom feature. When this gets to that point, then you'll be able to click on Minnesota and actually see the detail. I could certainly, right now, I can go in as far as I want. I can get down to seeing, city streets and so on if I wanted to, just like you can with most of these tools. I could plot zip codes here if I wanted to. I do have zip codes in my data set. Right now, this is just by state, so I could see that. So I would say, though, the thing I really like about this is that it's really quick. It's very quick. And a lot of times, most people are not spending a ton of time with the map anyways. They're looking for the outliers, the big nuggets, and they want to click on that and start to see the detail. So you shouldn't be looking at too much detail on a map, I hope. Okay. That's basically.
Filter from the widgets to the other widget, like click on the state to filter your customer list down to the state.
Yep.
That those customers in, or the other way also at the same time.
So you're saying create like a filter for, or a.
Just by visually clicking. So if I clicked on the state of Minnesota, for example, give me just the list of customers that are in Minnesota.
That would be handled through what's called a URL action within here. So there aren't what are called dashboard actions per se, where you can pick this and say, when I click on Minnesota, I want this to show me only Minnesota stuff. You can do that. It's a little bit of a, so for example, this right here and this right here have different URLs. You know, I could show you all of it, but it's really long. What you do is you basically go in this and say, when I click on state, I want to see this I want to go to this URL and apply that. So it doesn't work quite as seamlessly as some of the other tools, but it does work. It also allows you to maybe click on something and go directly to a different dashboard if you want, or even go to email, for example, or a website or whatever. So that part works really well. I would say it.
I would not be surprised if that's not. I would be surprised if that's not on the roadmap.
Yeah. Yep. That's basically what I wanted to show you guys. We could spend hours at this, and you know I love doing that, and you can probably tell.